I lived through a nightmare. Cops pulled me over on the highway and tried to make me pay them on the spot. Their excuse, my vehicle wasn't authorized in the community. They didn't know a hidden dash cam had already started turning their charade into evidence. But let me start at the beginning. Before we dive in, tell me where you're listening from today. It was dawn. Red and blue flared in my mirror and not my lights. A white SUV with a cheap light bar and community compliance decals tried to stop me on Highway 17. I smiled and thought, okay, let's play. I checked my speed, 54 and a 55, seatbelt on, headlights on. I hadn't run that last stop sign on the county road. The part of my brain that's still a cop ran the checklist. I was clean. So what was this? I eased onto the gravel shoulder. The tires crunched loud in the half-light. I killed the engine and watched the SUV pull in behind me. Big white letters read Oak Haven Estates, Community Compliance. My neighborhood, beige houses, perfectly trimmed lawns, an absurd level of management. Stepping out of the driver's side was a ghost from my past I'd hoped was long buried. Kane. He looked bigger than I remembered. Or maybe the tactical vest puffed him up. It was the kind you buy online, Velcro, empty pouches, trying to look tough. He'd been a deputy once, a bad one. Lazy, quick to anger, and convinced everyone was a nail for his hammer. I was the sergeant who wrote the final report that got him fired. The report about creative evidence handling and an unprofessional exchange with a judge's wife over a speeding ticket. He hadn't taken it well. Now he was playing cop in a glorified SUV with lights. Kane sauntered to my window, hand resting near a holstered taser, a smug smirk on his face. The face of a man who thought he'd finally hit the lottery after a lifetime of losing tickets. Well, he rumbled. Sergeant James Francis. Fancy seeing you out here. He leaned in and peered into my truck. You're a little far from your jurisdiction, aren't you? I took a slow sip of coffee and left the window cracked. A habit for safety, and it annoys people, which is a bonus. Morning, Kane. This is a public road. Your rules stop at the gate, I said. Private security can't run traffic stops. That's the law, Oak Haven Estates business, he shot back. A younger guy, nervous, climbed out of the passenger side, clutching a clipboard like a shield. Kane pointed at my front bumper. Your vehicle registration sticker appears obscured by mud. That's a violation of Oak Haven Bylaw 217, Section B. I looked. There was a small splatter of mud from yesterday's fishing trip. The sticker was readable. This was a bad joke. Kane chuckled, dry and nasty. Not anymore, he said. Thanks to our partnership with the county, our compliance division has been granted authority to enforce community standards on access roads. Councilman Dwyer pushed it through. County memos don't override state code. You can't annex Highway 17. The kid cleared his throat. Sir, the council resolution defines any road commonly used by a majority of residents as a community thoroughfare extension. Per the agreement, we may issue citations and, if necessary, take remedial action. Remedial action was code for their little tow and impound racket run by a greaseball named Rizzo. I wasn't getting a ticket. I was getting extorted. You're not writing me a ticket, Kane, I said. It wasn't a question. His grin vanished and a cold fire took its place. This was Kane testing his reach, seeing how far he could push. Oh, I'm not just writing a ticket, he said, voice low. He nodded to the clipboard kid. This vehicle is in persistent violation. It's an eyesore. It doesn't meet community aesthetic standards. We're immobilizing it. I let silence do the work. The cheap light bar hummed. Since we're trading authority, cite me the statute, I said. Kane blinked. The kid squinted at his clipboard like it might give answers. Community partnership resolution, he stammered. Tri-state right-of-way law, I cut in. Unauthorized immobilization is a misdemeanor unless it endangers traffic. A tanker moaned past on the highway. Its horn was long and mean. The kid flinched. Francis, don't make this difficult, Kane warned. I'm recording, I said, tapping my mic. Names for the log. No comment, the kid whispered. Great. No comment and liability, I replied. Spell them how you want. Kane leaned close, breath smelling like burnt coffee. Call your lawyer, he said. Already did, I said, lifting my mug. She's hot, 5'7". Name's Anna, she bills in fax. The kid's boot wobble betrayed him. For the first time, Kane's eyes moved. Not at me, but at the highway camera pointed straight at us. Before I could take it in, the kid scurried to my front wheel carrying a big yellow parking boot. A boot on a state highway. I kept thinking about school pickup at 3. No truck, no kid home. This wasn't just a power trip. It was a declaration of war. Kane leaned in again, face close to the window. Gonna be hard to get to work, Sergeant. Harder to pick up your kid, he said. He knew my schedule. He knew about Leo, that was deliberate. The calm mask I'd practiced for years started to crack. My hand rested inches from my service weapon, holstered from the day before. I'm authorized to carry off duty. I didn't reach for it. I squeezed the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. They weren't just coming after me. They were coming after my life, my family, with a stupid yellow boot and a petty grin. The metallic clank of the boot locking to my wheel was almost absurd. It was also infuriating. The kid, more suited for a calculus exam than a protection racket, tightened the last bolt and gave it a final uncertain tug. He scurried back to the safety of the HOA SUV. Kane stood with arms crossed, that insufferable grin back where it belonged. He was enjoying every second. On the outside, I was a statue. Show no anger. Show no fear. Let them think they have all the cards. The first rule they teach you. So that's it? I asked, voice calm, almost conversational. You're just going to leave my truck on the side of a state highway with a boot on it? Kane shrugged. Rules are rules, Francis. Call the number on the sticker. We'll send a tow. Riz'll take it to impound. Settle your fines there. He rattled off fees. Aesthetic violation, immobilization fee, administrative processing. Fees add up. Fines turn into liens. Liens turn into quick sales. That was their business model. The kid came forward with a large orange sticker and slapped it onto my driver's window, right in my line of sight. It was full of fine print warnings and bold letters. The clock on my dashboard read 6:15 a.m. The clock was already ticking. I kept my face impassive, looked at Kane, then at the boot, then back at Kane. The State Transportation Code has some very clear rules about unauthorized immobilization of a vehicle on a state-maintained highway. I said evenly. It carries a heavy fine and the possible jail time, too. Kane laughed. A real full laugh. Oh, I'm terrified. What are you going to do, arrest me, Sergeant? You're not even on duty. And like I told you, we've got an agreement signed and sealed by Councilman Dwyer himself. We're a sanctioned auxiliary service. Sanctioned nonsense, I muttered. Dwyer couldn't authorize them to enforce anything on a state highway, any more than he could send them to the moon. They were betting on intimidation, counting on people not knowing the law. And for most of my neighbors, that bluff probably worked. People got scared, paid the fine, and moved on. But they picked the wrong man. Beneath the steering wheel, hidden from view, I double-tapped a small button on my comms belt. It sent a silent, non-emergency ping to dispatch, tagging my location and starting a 30-second audio log. Not an SOS, just the beginning of the official record. All right, Kane, I said, letting my shoulders sag, pretending to give up. My voice was tired, defeated. You win. Mind if I grab my coffee mug before you have this towed? His smirk widened. He thought I'd finally broken. Be my guest, he said smugly. Rizzo should be here in about 20 minutes. Don't wander off. I opened my door slowly, reached for my mug and my phone. As I stepped out, I took a slow look around. The boot clamped on my tire, the bright orange sticker on my window, their white SUV flashing its cheap lights behind me. Kane stood there like a self-appointed king, basking in the glow of his imagined authority. I lifted my phone, pretending to shield my eyes from the lights, and snapped 3 quick photos, one of the boot with my license plate visible, one of the sticker, and a wide shot showing both vehicles and the highway marker in the background. Clean, clear, time-stamped, and geotagged. Evidence that would hold up anywhere. Shutting the door, I turned to him and nodded. You have a good day, Kane. Then I started walking, 1 mile down the shoulder toward Oak Haven Estates. He watched me go, probably thinking I was heading home to lick my wounds. He didn't know I was already on the phone with the one person who could turn this whole thing around. Hey, Anna, I said quietly. Yeah, it's me. Plans changed. I need a ride, and I need you to start digging. Look into Councilman Dwyer and a tow company run by someone named Rizzo. We've got a situation. I could already hear her typing before I finished. Anna was a research analyst, sharp, methodical, relentless. She could find a needle in a digital haystack in under 5 minutes. Game On. Kane and his boss, HOA President Karen Duke, thought they were playing checkers. They were about to find out I play chess, and my queen was already moving. The long walk cooled my anger, leaving behind cold focus. My truck, my property. was being held hostage on a public highway by a private group with a vendetta. This wasn't a fine.
This was extortion disguised as enforcement. When I reached home, Anna was already at the kitchen table, laptop open, fingers flying over the keys. Her focus was razor sharp, her brow furrowed. She looked up, her expression a mix of concern and fire. "They booted your truck on the highway?" she asked. "Yep," I said, grabbing a bottle of water. "Led by our old friend Kane. Apparently, they're a sanctioned auxiliary service now. Sanctioned by who? A councilman with a $10 haircut and the ethics of a rattlesnake?" she muttered, typing faster. "I'm already finding things. Dwyer pushed a community partnership ordinance 3 months ago. Vague language about local enforcement and public-private cooperation. It's basically a blank check." We spent the next few hours digging. I borrowed Anna's car to drop off Leo at school, then came back to find the pieces falling into place. By evening, the picture was clear. HOA President Karen. Duke sat on the board of a property management company that handled Dwyer's business loans. Rizzo's Towing had an exclusive no-bid contract with Oakhaven Estates. Every boot, every tow, money straight into their pockets. A neat, profitable little ecosystem of corruption. That night, the harassment began. Around 10, a blinding white light poured through our living room window. I stepped outside. Parked across the street, just beyond our property line, was the same white community compliance SUV. One of their guys stood beside it, holding a massive spotlight aimed directly at our house. It was petty, childish, designed to provoke. I could feel the old instincts kicking in, confront, and control. But that's exactly what they wanted. A reaction they could twist against me. Anna's hand on my arm stopped me cold. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't give them the satisfaction." She was right. We closed the blinds, but the harsh light still bled through the cracks. Like an accusation that wouldn't fade, an hour later came a new sound, a faint, high-pitched buzz. I looked out the back window. A drone hovered just above the fence line, its red and green lights blinking in the dark. The camera pointed directly at our back porch and our kitchen window. It was an invasion, a violation. Light trespass and drone surveillance aimed into a private home, both crimes. Our house was supposed to be our refuge. It was the one place untouchable by the ugliness of the world. But now, thanks to Karen Duke and her cronies, it felt like we were living in a glass box. "That's it," I said quietly. "They're filming our house." Anger surged hot and heavy. What gave them the right? What made them feel untouchable? A crooked ordinance, a fake badge, or just blind arrogance? I was seconds from calling the real police when a rustle from the fence broke my focus. It was Finley. Our next-door neighbor, a retired accountant with a sharp mind and a deep mistrust of authority. He leaned over the fence, squinting into the glare. "Evening, James," he whispered dramatically. "Looks like you've got yourself some paparazzi." His humor was a small but welcome relief. "Something like that," I said. "You get in the light show too?" He nodded. "Oh yeah. Feels like a movie premiere out here. Only the stars are a couple of goons in a Ford Explorer, and now we've got ourselves a peeping drone. Real classy." The drone buzzed sharply, almost as if it hurt him. It turned its lens toward Finley. Without missing a beat, he raised his garden hose, already in his hand. "You think this thing's waterproof?" he asked, eyes twinkling. "I wouldn't," I said, though part of me wanted him to try. "They're looking for a reaction," I added. "Any reaction?" He sighed, lowering the hose. "You're right, but it's tempting." The three of us, Anna, Finley, and I, stood in the still darkness, trapped between a blinding spotlight on one side and a humming drone on the other. We were prisoners in our own homes. It was absurd, infuriating, and utterly dehumanizing. But more than that, it was a turning point. This wasn't about a boot on my truck anymore. It wasn't even about one night of harassment. This was a calculated campaign of intimidation. Karen Duke and her partners weren't just chasing money. They wanted control. They wanted power over every homeowner inside their little empire. Standing there under the harsh glow of their lights, I made up my mind. I wouldn't play their game of provocation and reaction anymore. I was going to rewrite the rules. I'd dismantle their operation piece by piece, from the inside out. They wanted a show, fine. I'd give them one they'd never forget. The next 48 hours became a masterclass in quiet, focused anger. Anna and I worked like a perfectly tuned team. While she dug deeper into the digital connections linking Duke, Dwyer, and Rizzo, I turned my attention to their reworld stronghold, the tow yard. That place was their vault, their pressure point, the spot where intimidation turned into profit. I needed to see it with my own eyes, not as an officer, but as one of their victims. We built a plan, risky but necessary. I pulled out some old clothes, grease-stained jeans, a torn t-shirt, a faded baseball cap. I left my badge, weapon, and wallet at home. I took $50 in cash in the burner phone Anna had prepped. That night, I wasn't James the cop. I was just another desperate man looking for cheap car parts. Rizzo's towing and impound was exactly what I expected, a graveyard of bad luck and worse judgment. Hidden in a forgotten industrial strip, the place was fenced with barbed wire and packed tight with cars. Some were wrecked, but many looked brand new. A family minivan with a soccer team sticker. A contractor's pickup with tools still in the bed. Even a clean sedan like the ones in our neighborhood. These weren't wrecks, they were hostages. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and hopelessness. Behind a metal desk sat a heavy-set man in a stained shirt and a permanent frown. Rizzo. He didn't even glance up from his crossword when he growled, "What do you want?" "Looking for a side mirror?" I said, roughening my voice. "Oh, 8 Civic. Heard you sell parts sometimes?" "What?" He finally looked up, squinting. After sizing me up, he muttered, "We're not a junkyard. Everything in that lot's pending resolution." That phrase, pending resolution, was a trap wrapped in bureaucracy. It meant every owner was being drained by daily storage fees until they gave up and Rizzo claimed their cars. I played along. "Yeah, I get it. Buddy of mine said his car got towed here last week. I thought maybe you could let me take a look. $50 for your time?" His eyes flicked to the cash, then back to me. After a pause, he pocketed the bill. 5 minutes. "You touch anything, I'm calling the sheriff." He buzzed open the gate, and I walked into the yard. The number of cars was staggering. I moved slowly, my phone hanging loosely by my side, snapping discrete photos. Each image, every license plate, every marked tire, every bogus tow slip was automatically uploaded to a secure cloud server Anna had set up. Nothing traceable. I spotted the Miller's SUV, the Garcia's work van, even old Mr. Henderson's prized classic. They were stripping our community one vehicle at a time. As I looped back toward the office, I saw Rizzo yelling into the phone with his back turned. On the wall behind him was a clipboard labeled Oak Haven Active Tows. A full list: names, plates, violation codes. Proof. I leaned in and snapped a few quick photos through the grimy glass. The images weren't perfect, but they were enough. Evidence of a coordinated predatory system. When I walked back in, I shook my head. "No luck," I said casually. He didn't look up. The 50 was gone, but I didn't care. I left that lot feeling like I'd just robbed a vault. I hadn't taken money, I had taken their secrecy. As I drove off in Anna's car, a thought hit me. If they were willing to go this far for profit, how far would they go to protect it? The answer was simple, as far as it took. We now had evidence, photos, cords connections between Duke, Dwyer, and Rizzo. A solid case, but still circumstantial. We had the what. We needed the how. We needed to catch them breaking a real law. And I knew it was only a matter of time. People like them always escalate when intimidation stops working. So I prepared. After 3 frustrating days, I finally got my truck released, nearly $900 in bogus fines. I paid in cash, took the receipt, and drove straight to a friend's auto security shop. "I want cameras," I told him. "Hidden, always on. Record everything, front and back, and wire it straight to the battery." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. An hour later, my old F-150 was wired like an undercover sting vehicle. I parked it right back in the driveway, bait in plain sight. 2 nights later, the trap was sprung. The drone and spotlight routine had become so regular that we'd stopped reacting. But around 2 in the morning, Buster, our old golden retriever, started a low, uneasy growl. He never growled. I slid out of bed and peeked through a narrow gap in the curtains. The street was pitch black. No lights, no sound. Too quiet. Then I saw him, a figure dressed in black, creeping up my driveway, hugging the shadows beneath the oak tree. When he stepped into the moonlight, my stomach tightened. It was Kane. Adrenaline hit me like electricity. I watched as he picked the passenger side lock. Quick, efficient, practiced. In less than 10 seconds, he was inside. The faint glow of a flashlight flickered as he moved around the cab. What was he doing? Planting a tracker. Cutting wires. I stayed still, filming from the window with my phone. After a minute, slipped out, closing the door so gently it barely clicked. He glanced around once and vanished back into the darkness. I waited 5 long minutes before stepping outside. The air was cold, my pulse still racing. I checked the truck carefully.
At first, nothing seemed out of place, until I looked under the passenger seat. Pushed deep into the corner was a small, clear bag. Inside was a white, crystalline substance. It was planted, an attempt to frame me, to destroy my credibility, to make me the villain in my own story. It was a setup, a plant, a frame job. Classic, desperate, and unbelievably stupid. They wanted me arrested, discredited, and fired. They were after my badge, the one thing that still gave me the power to fight back. I went inside, woke Anna, and pulled up the footage from our hidden cameras. What we saw left no doubt. The high-definition feed from the dash cam caught everything. Kane's face clear as day as he leaned into my truck. We watched him pull a small bag from his pocket and shove it under the seat. The rear camera caught his approach, his retreat. The whole thing undeniable and perfect. It wasn't just evidence. It was a felony on video. I didn't touch the bag. We left it there for a warrant pickup. "Oh, you magnificent rusty beast," Anna whispered, eyes locked on the laptop. She was talking about the truck, and she was right. We finally had them. This wasn't about HOA bylaws or towing fees anymore. This was conspiracy, breaking and entering and framing a law enforcement officer. Serious charges, the kind that end careers and start prison sentences. Karen Duke, in her greed and arrogance, had gone too far. She sent her hired thug to plant evidence, never realizing my house was wired with cameras and mics. The question now was, and what next? Do I take this to the sheriff, or was the corruption deeper than one dirty councilman? The evidence was powerful, but it had to be used carefully. One wrong move and they'd bury it. The next morning, I walked into the Picton County Sheriff's Department with the video on a thumb drive. I felt a grim satisfaction. This was the final piece. The case was airtight, but trust was another story. The sheriff was a decent man, but old school. He avoided political trouble and hated shaking the system. If I brought it to him, it might disappear into a mountain of paperwork. So I went to someone else, Deputy Morales, young, sharp, hungry. I'd trained him myself. A straight arrow, or so I thought. He was at his desk finishing reports. "Morales, I need a word." "Private," I said quietly. We stepped into a small interview room. The air smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. I laid everything out. The harassment, the towing racket, Anna's discoveries, and finally the video. "This is from my truck's hidden cam." "Last night," I said, sliding the thumb drive across the table. He plugged it in. I watched his expression shift as he saw Kane break into my truck. His jaw tightened. When Kane planted the bag under the seat, Morales let out a slow whistle. "Sergeant, this is big. That's multiple felonies," he said. "I know. That's why I brought it to you. We have to handle this smart and by the book. Dwyer's name is all over this. If he gets wind of it, it'll vanish." He nodded, thinking fast. Then he ejected the drive and handed it back. He tapped the desk twice, our old field code for stay put. But his tone changed. "Sergeant," he said formally, "this is a complicated jurisdictional issue." My gut went cold. "Jurisdictional?" "Morales, it's a felony. It happened in the county. That's our job." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "The initial complaint involves an HOA, a civil entity. Councilman Dwyer's office has directed us to let the Oak Haven Compliance Division handle internal issues. I stared at him, stunned. Internal issues? He planted drugs in my truck. That's not civil, that's criminal. My voice was low but sharp with anger. Morales stood, his face blank. I understand your frustration, Sergeant, but my hands are tied. The official process would be to file a report with the Oak Haven Estates Grievance Committee. As for the video, without a warrant or established chain of custody, it might not hold up. He was stonewalling me, quoting nonsense policy. The kid I trained and the one I thought stood for the badge was either scared or bought. My thoughts spun. Had they gotten to him? Was the rot that deep? Maybe Karen Duke was right. Maybe power really could by its own laws. I stood, disappointment burning through me. For the first time, I felt completely alone. Anna had my back. Finley was a good neighbor, but inside the system I was on my own, I see, I said coldly, pocketing the drive. Thanks for your time, Deputy. I walked out without looking back. As I passed his desk, I heard his voice on the phone, low, hurried. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew who he was calling. Kane, maybe Duke. Outside, the sunlight hit me like a slap. The betrayal cut deeper than any threat or bribe. The system I'd served was just as corrupt as the people I was trying to stop. I sat in my truck, the same one holding proof of their crimes, and stared at the steering wheel. The rules had changed. The law in Picton County was for sale. If I wanted justice, I'd have to take it myself, and I knew one thing for sure. The next time a uniform came knocking, it might not be to help. They could be coming to arrest me with Kane and Karen Duke smiling behind them. The trap was closing and my options were running out. But Morales' betrayal did one thing he didn't intend. It made me stronger. If the system wouldn't fight, I'd make it. That evening, an email hit every Oak Haven resident's inbox. The sender, Karen Duke. Subject: Mandatory Community Compliance Sweep. In 2 days, her compliance team, along with Rizzo's towing, would inspect every house. Any car with rust, a flat tire, expired tags, or chipped paint would be immediately towed. No warnings, no appeals, it was punishment, and for all of us. Her message was clear: defy her and she'd destroy your peace. As I read the email, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sweep at 8 a.m., single entry. Oak Street. Other gates chained for safety. The message was short. Surprise planned. Be ready. I knew instantly who it was from, Morales. He hadn't betrayed me. He'd been playing a part, forced to act like the loyal soldier with Dwyer breathing down his neck. Now he was warning me. The game was still on. Relief hit first, followed by adrenaline. Single entry. Surprise. That meant a trap. The morning of the sweep arrived heavy with tension. You could feel it in the air. Neighbors who normally waved in passing now gathered in hushed groups, whispering nervously. They were scared, outmatched, and unsure how to fight back. Anna was at home. Our makeshift command center spread across the kitchen table. Laptops, radios, and phones linking her to a few residents who'd quietly agreed to help. I was in my truck parked near the Oak Street gate, the only open entrance to the neighborhood. At 7:55 a.m., just as the text predicted, they began setting up. Kane's white SUV blocked one lane, his men unloading something from the back. A long, jointed bar lined with hollow spikes. A tire shredder, the kind used in high-speed pursuits. Seeing it here in a quiet suburban neighborhood was insane. They were building a roadblock, a trap to funnel residents into one lane, tow everything in sight and punish anyone who resisted. I parked about 100 yards back, watching them through the windshield. The tow trucks from Rizzo's fleet began rolling in behind Kane's SUV like scavengers circling a carcass. 4 of them. I glanced at the passenger seat. The tool I'd brought wasn't a weapon, just a long metal pole with a hooked end, the kind used to lift utility covers. I'd borrowed it from my own garage. My plan was simple but risky. I waited. At exactly 8:00 a.m., Kane gave the signal. His men began dragging the spike strip across the road. That was my cue. I shifted into gear and rolled forward, slow at first, steady. Kane saw me coming and tensed. He started shouting orders, waving frantically. Get it down, now. They scrambled to stretch the spikes across the lane. 50 yards, 40, 30. Kane planted himself in the middle of the road, hand resting on his holster, trying to look tough. He didn't know me very well. At 20 yards, I veered slightly, but not at him, but toward the edge of the spike strip. My tires screeched as I hit the brakes, stopping just inches from the line of metal teeth. For a moment, everything froze. Kane's mouth hung open. His men stood there, staring. Then I moved. The passenger door was already open. I leaned out, hooked the pole under the edge of the strip, and pulled hard. The thing was heavy, but it shifted. "Now, Finley!" I shouted. My neighbor burst from the bushes, firing up the leaf blower we'd rigged. It wasn't about air, it was about chaos. The sudden roar shattered the calm, startling Kane's crew. I yanked the pole again, harder this time. The spike strip flipped halfway, a flash of silver under the morning sun, then clattered forward. One of the tow trucks rolled too close. Its tires hit the raised edge with a hiss and a pop. Both front tires deflated instantly, the driver jerking the wheel as the truck skidded sideways into Kane's SUV. The second truck, tailing too close, rammed straight into the first. The roadblock exploded into chaos. Metal crunched, tires hissed, and steam billowed from shattered grills. Kane's perfect show of authority had turned into a wrecked convoy in under 10 seconds. He stood there, frozen, staring at the mess, his masterpiece undone by his own plan. Neighbors poured out of their houses, drawn by the noise. They saw the wrecked trucks, the twisted metal, and me standing by my F-150 pole in hand. Kane's face darkened, fury overtaking shock. He needed someone to blame. His eyes found Finley. My poor neighbor was still holding his leaf blower like a trophy, grinning like he'd just won a contest. "Well," Finley said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "that didn't go as planned, did it?" "That did it," Kane snapped. He stormed toward Finley, his voice. My poor neighbor was still holding his leaf blower like a trophy, grinning like he'd just won a contest. "Well," Finley said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "that didn't go as planned, did it?" "That did it," Kane snapped. He stormed toward Finley, his rising. "You think you're clever, old man?" He barked, jabbing a finger into Finley's chest. "You're interfering with official business. That's a violation." Finley, smaller but steady, didn't back down. "Just doing some yard work," he said calmly. "Last I checked, that's still allowed." That calm defiance was the spark. Kane shoved him, hard. Finley stumbled backward, falling onto the pavement as the blower clattered beside him. The crowd gasped. That was the breaking point. Harassing people was one thing. Putting hands on a neighbor, especially an older man, was something else entirely. Before I even thought about it, I was moving. 3 strides and I was between them. I planted myself in front of Finley, who was trying to sit up, dazed but breathing. "Get out of my way, Francis," Kane growled, his jaw tight. "This doesn't concern you." "You just assaulted my neighbor," I said, my voice cold and steady. "It concerns me." He laughed, short and mean. "Assault?" He tripped. "Now move, or I'll have you arrested for interference." He stepped closer, trying to use his size to intimidate me. His hand came up. Too fast, too aggressive. That was his mistake. 2 decades in uniform had taught me how to deal with people like Kane. Loud, reckless, and convinced no one could stop them. As his hand came forward, I moved with precision, calm, controlled, defensive. I deflected his arm, redirected his momentum, and before he even realized it, he was the one off balance. It wasn't a wild swing. It was a short, precise punch, a clean, controlled strike aimed straight at his jaw. My knuckles met their mark with a sharp, satisfying thud. Bone, leather, done. No wild aggression, no follow-up. I wanted control, not chaos. Kane's eyes went wide in disbelief, then glassy with shock. His knees buckled, and he dropped like a bag of wet cement, landing right beside the spike strip he'd been so proud of, out cold. The entire fight, from his shove to my punch, lasted less than 3 seconds. It was over before it began. Silence fell. Every resident stood frozen, their eyes wide. They had just watched the neighborhood bully, the so-called enforcer, get knocked out cold with one clean hit. Then a sound broke through the stillness. Applause. It started with Finley, brushing dust off his clothes. Then another neighbor joined in, and another. Within seconds, the entire crowd was clapping, cheering even. I didn't bask in it. Instead, I knelt beside Kane, checked his pulse, strong and steady. He'd wake up with a bruised jaw and a bruised ego, but he was fine. When I looked up, I saw something changing in my neighbor's eyes. Fear was fading, replaced by something stronger, hope. For the first time, they saw the truth. The bully wasn't some untouchable force. He was just a man, and now that man was lying unconscious on the asphalt. Anna came running over, first aid kit in hand. Her eyes darted from Kane to me. Is he... He's fine, I said. He'll wake up with a new respect for his elders. The balance of power in Oak Haven Estates had just shifted, and everyone knew it. This was no longer about vehicles, bylaws, or petty control. It was about people standing up for themselves. All it took was one act of courage and one punch to remind them they had the power all along. With Kane unconscious and his compliance sweep in ruins, Karen Duke's carefully built empire began to crumble. Her next move was her biggest mistake. Panicked and furious, she called an emergency HOA meeting that evening at the community clubhouse. The email she sent was dripping with anger and blame, accusing me of organizing a violent attack and vowing to expose me in front of everyone. She thought she'd control the room. She had no idea she was walking straight into a trap. That afternoon, while I gave a full statement to a state trooper about the spike strip and Kane's assault on Finley, Anna was busy setting the stage for our counterattack. Finley, now a local hero, helped her set up a small but powerful projector hidden behind a potted plant at the back of the clubhouse. The laptop was synced to Anna's phone. When the time came, she'd press a single button. By evening, the clubhouse was packed. The air buzzed with tension, a mix of fear, anger, and curiosity. Karen Duke stood at the front, next to Councilman Dwyer and a bruised, sulking Kane. Behind them hung a blank projection screen, ready for her speech. Karen began, her voice dripping with false concern. She talked about safety, rules, and necessary enforcement. She painted herself as the victim, the protector of the community, against a dangerous rogue. She glared right at me when she said it. "We will not be intimidated by bullies," she declared. "We will not allow one man's defiance to endanger us all." Right then, Anna tapped her phone. The projector behind the plant flickered to life. An email appeared on the big screen behind Karen, not her slideshow, but something else entirely. It was a public record email between Karen Duke and Councilman Dwyer. Subject: Oak Haven Ordinance. "Frank," it read, "the language needs to be vague. We need discretionary enforcement. Give my team the teeth they need and I'll make sure that little business loan issue of yours disappears." "We all eat." Gasps filled the room. Dwyer turned pale, staring at the screen like it was a ghost. Karen stumbled, words dying on her lips. Before she could recover, Anna swiped again. A new image appeared, the cleaned-up photo of Rizzo's tow log, highlighting names everyone in the room recognized. The Garcias, the Millers, Mr. Henderson, each name beside a false violation and an outrageous fee. Shouts erupted. They said my van was commercial. Mr. Garcia yelled, "I'm a carpenter, those are my tools." Karen slammed the lectern, shouting, "This is unauthorized. This is slander." But it was too late. The crowd wasn't listening. Then came the final blow. Anna hit play. The projector filled with grainy night vision footage, straight from my truck's hidden camera. The room went silent. They watched Kane, the head of compliance, breaking into my vehicle. They saw him slip a small bag of white powder under the seat. The truth was on full display. A collective gasp filled the clubhouse. This wasn't rule enforcement, it was corruption. I stood up, unclipping the small body camera from my shirt. My voice was calm and steady as it carried through the stunned silence. "For the record," I said, "this entire meeting, including the evidence you're seeing, is being live-streamed to the State Attorney General's office. They've been staged 2 blocks away since noon, waiting for probable cause." I slowly turned the camera, panning across the faces of the room, my neighbors, wide-eyed and speechless. Then I focused on Karen Duke, Dwyer, and Kane. Their expressions said it all: shock, panic, and fear. And then, the sound. The distant wail of sirens growing louder, closer, not one, dozens. A wave of justice rolling in. Moments later, the clubhouse doors burst open. The time for intimidation was over. The truth had arrived. And this time it had backup. The bags were already sealed and logged. But when the doors burst open, it wasn't a single deputy. It was Deputy Morales, flanked by 6 state troopers and county detectives. He stepped forward, voice steady and hard as iron. "Karen Duke," Morales said, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and extortion." 2 troopers closed the distance and gently took her hands. The cuffs clicked, a tiny sound that somehow filled the entire room. One by one, they moved through the front row. Dwyer sputtered about rights and procedure. Rizzo was quietly taken at his office. Kane didn't fight. He just sat, hollow-eyed, as if the air had been taken out of him. The untouchable had been touched, and it happened in front of everyone they'd terrorized. What followed was fast and loud. The video, the email trail, and the stack of neighbor statements made the case obvious. The state attorney general stepped in and reclassified it. Not just HOA overreach, but organized criminal enterprise. News vans swarmed Picton County. Oak Haven's lean-for-profit pipeline became a national story. What we stopped wasn't just a local scam. It was a rollout that would have been copied across the county. Court moved at its own pace, but the outcome felt inevitable. Karen Duke took a plea: 5 years, forfeiture of her slush funds, and a lifetime ban from HOA boards. Councilman Dwyer resigned and faced corruption charges. Rizzo lost his license, his yard, and his freedom. Kane, caught on high-definition video planting evidence in my truck, drew the longest sentence of them all. Oak Haven's Community Compliance Division was dissolved by court order. Dwyer's ordinance was repealed. A class action led by Finley clawed back the leftovers. Every family hit with bogus fines or TOWs received restitution plus damages. It didn't erase the stress of those months, but it did put money back into the hands the crooks had emptied. The neighborhood exhaled. Spotlights stopped. The drone went quiet. Garage doors stayed open again. Kids dared to play in the street. Beige houses bloomed into color as people repaired, painted, and breathed freely. Finley tore out his hedges and planted a riot of flowers, a gorgeous, defiant mess. No one cited him. Half the block copied the idea. Karen's ornamental President parking plaque was auctioned for charity. Finley bought it for $5 and turned it into a birdbath. Little moments like that felt enormous. At our house, normal felt new. Leo rode his bike without a clipboard-wielding chaperone in tow. Anna shut her laptop at sunset and simply held my hand on the porch. Quiet stopped being a threat. It became ours again. I learned something important through all of it. I've always believed in the system, but a system is only as honest as the people in it. Give bad actors a little darkness on secrecy favors a crooked ordinance, and they'll draft their own rules. The real power of Untouchable is secrecy. That's what fueled Karen's kingdom. Confusion, quiet deals, and the hope that no one would look too closely. We looked. We turned on the lights, emails on a screen, body cam live, spike strip hissing, and her power shrank to its true size, a bully's bluff. My name is James Francis. I work highway patrol. I'm also a husband, a dad, and a neighbor. I don't go looking for fights, but if you bring one to my street, I will end it clean. Justice isn't always tidy or quiet. Sometimes it sounds like tires going flat and handcuffs clicking. Sometimes it looks like a projector full of truth.